The Boise Town Square Mall will be celebrating its 35th anniversary coming up this fall, and if you lived in the area during that time, there's a good chance you've visited the mall, looking for a new pair of shoes, new pair of shades, or just because you want a Wetzel's pretzel. And in doing so, if you've ever entered on the west side, been one of the 23,000 or so daily drivers on that stretch of Milwaukee Street, maybe you've wondered why that road around the mall on that side is so curvy. Well, we didn't either, until we heard the reason why, and then we were like, do tell, because we love learning about and getting to know Idaho. A quick scan across a map of West Boise shows most of the north-south streets are pretty straight, until you get to the area around the Town Square Mall, where a drive south on Milwaukee Street goes from Beeline to bendy. But why?
As you can see, this curve in the road is unusual. It's an unusual site characteristic.
Jump back 7 months ago, when Boise City Council was considering allowing a change in signage for the strip mall across the street.
Again, you're in this curve.
Jeff Huber was making his case.
There's one little window there where you might glance and see maybe a shop front, but it's very difficult when you're trying to drive.
When he relayed the reason,
so this slide is an important slide.
For the roundabout part of the road.
See, when the mall was built, and this whole area was master planned really in unison, and everyone thought that this road was going to go straight through here. Everyone except Mrs. Ott and her farm, who lived right there.
Mrs. Ott, Peg and her husband Larry were the owners of a 10-acre parcel on Ash Park Lane. The Otts bought the land in 1960, wanting to live out their lives in true rural fashion, in a turn-of-the-century farmhouse. And they weren't interested in turning it over.
Mrs. Ott was quite a character, the last of the true pioneers, really.
For decades, developers, including Huber, tried to make this area ripe for retail. Mrs. Ott refused.
I would go to her house, sit in the living room with her. She'd make me cowboy coffee, and I'd try everything possible to try to get her to sell her property. Standing in her living room in a dirt floor with a big wood chopping block next to the wood heater stove. She had sheep coming through there. She had pet blue jays inside. It was really something to see.
You see, Mrs. Ott didn't want to see her home and sanctuary cease to exist.
The developers offered her millions of dollars. I'd say, Mrs. Ott, let's go get you another farm with a nice farmhouse. Nope, she wouldn't do it.
Money may talk, but not to Mrs. Ott. Even into the 80s, when developers decided to move forward with the building of Boise's first mall, they were forced to move Milwaukee traffic around the Ott farm. Telling the Idaho Statesman in 1989, they just ignore it.
And that farm sat there until they both died, and they left that farm to their legal counsel.
In 1986, the Ott farm was finally sold, soon to be filled with outlet stores and restaurants.
But that's why that curve is in the road today.
All because of the obstinance of one Mrs. Ott. And as you heard Mr. Huber say, when Mrs. Ott passed away, the land was left to her lawyer since the Otts didn't have any heirs. They did have a lot of animals, though, roaming the premises. Lots of birds, fowl, water or otherwise, dogs, cats, a cow, even a neutered ram. One other interesting part about the Otts' impact on the mall. While they were building it, they had a berm built up around their property to keep all their critters in and keep people visiting the mall from peering in on their self-sufficient lives. That berm is why there's an uphill part on the northwestern parking lot.